we go. Woo. I'll call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, December 6th at 2 p.m. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we are fortunate to be gathered together on the unceded territory of the Sim people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Are there any late items to add to the agenda? Seeing none, move on to adoption of the agenda. There are two minor corrections for your agenda. Items 17.2 on page 5 of your agenda and 17.3 of your agenda. On 17.2, it will need to be read for a second and third time, so there will be a second recommendation there. And on 17.3, we'd be reading it for a second and third time without reading it for the first time, so that one gets a first one. So with that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Herring. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's it. Anything under 5? Nothing. I see our TNRD director here is under 6. Were you presenting today or? Yes? Okay, come on up to the stand. Thank you. Yeah.
Testing. Oh. Hello. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yes. Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. With me being newly elected to the TNRD Area A, I'd like to give an update what I've learned so far from an inaugural board meeting with the TNRD. There has been a few restructuring at the TNRD as a result of the audits, from which 90% of the recommendations have been put into place. So that's what the TNRD staff has been busy with in the last couple of months. In addition to welcoming 8 new electoral area directors, myself included, this has put some extra workload on some of the TNRD staff. Sorry, I'm looking at Sherry. And the election statistics also came out, revealing that the voter turnout for Area A actually dropped 7% compared to the last election. So that's kind of reflecting on what I plan to do for my term, re-engage with, the area constituents post-COVID, as I'm sure, the District of Clearwater, what you guys will be focusing on in your term as well. So far, my oath of office was on the 17th of November. So, just slightly under a month, I've been reaching out to different ministries in the provincial government, such as the MOTI. A lot of them bearing good news that, big projects or, major projects are coming our way in the form of repaving from Birch Island to Mat River and such. So it's a good sign, I think, with everybody that I've discussed health meetings with so far. They are looking forward to, expanding their presence and works in our area. In terms of, as speaking of major works and, projects, the mines is probably on everybody's minds as well. I've reached out to their VP of Corporate Affairs and looking forward to be closely in touch and also updating Council and District of Clearwater as well. Any information I gather. DOC and TNRD, again, me as a new, director, still learning, the ropes. I have a feeling that we are, a very interlinked community, and we have to be, working together for the next 4 years on a lot of our projects. So I look forward to sharing information and collaborating. Yeah, thank you.
Just a note to say congratulations and just to be grateful for your enthusiasm in representation and that you stood for election. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. The 15th. Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Back with my mic on. We're having audio difficulties today, so if you're in the audience and you can't hear somebody, let us know. Kind of wave frantically or throw a ball of paper at us or something. So we'll do our best, but the system, we're getting most of it replaced because it's starting to fail. Moving on to item 7, delegations. Sergeant Grant Simpson is here. Come on up. We've got your report.
Yeah. I'll have it. So I don't just wanted to address any questions or concerns if any have any.
Questions? Fire away. It's
Yeah, I
yeah,
read
and,
it.
and use your microphone as well if it's
Yeah,
not
it
on.
doesn't
Okay.
seem to be.
Oh, now mine is stuck on.
Hello? There's it going. Okay. I was just curious, did you see any change with Trans Mountain winding down of any of stats coming through and things?
We're seeing some changes gradually in traffic. File count hasn't reduced itself so much, but yeah, a lot less traffic.
Okay.
Yeah, our file count still, even though they are winding down, a lot less. But I think the camp has reduced itself from 500 to 250.
Okay. Yeah, Council Sim.
Is there anything that you would like us to pay particular attention to that you think, I hope they caught that?
That's a tough one. Off the top of my head, I'd have to say no, not right now, but they should.
Okay, thank you. Further? No, thank you for that. It's interesting seeing a lot of highway presence and that sort of thing out there the last couple of days, and watching the road campaigns for impaired driving. Seeing some pretty crazy stats from other jurisdictions. How are we doing so far this holiday season? Are you
So far, so good.
is not the season to be quite that jolly and drive at this particular point? So
No, you can be.
yeah.
Just have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
Careful.
Yeah. I think I saw one in Vancouver where they got both people coming both ways were impaired at the same time, and that's a pretty high stat when you start getting to that sort of thing. So
No, it's been very good around.
yeah. And I'm assuming we're all feeling a little bit happier about some of these speed zones coming off with the pipeline starting to roll up the rug on some of these construction zones here for sure.
A lot less than almost.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially traveling, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
One more.
One more, councillors.
With this release of funds from the provincial government or the AG's department for rural policing, is that affecting our area at all, or is there some benefit
It'll
to it?
impact every area throughout the province, yes. Good news, a lot of money, yeah. Southeast District, very excited to see that, yeah, throughout the province.
Is it aimed mainly at recruiting or bringing more people in, or what's the focus?
No, recruiting has its own budget, and try not to laugh, it's $100,000 for the province. Yeah, for the province of BC, it's a budget. And we have the largest number of members here, 6,000. 6,600.
I think Councillor Sim could start lobbying on that. She's pretty good for lobbying on recruitment
To
budgets.
join our efforts.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Councillor Bratton.
I perused your report, but I may have missed. How's our at-risk youth looking in Clearwater? Do we have, what's our percentage? Is it getting worse, better? Is it at a bad point?
It's not really at a bad point. We're, as far as the schools are concerned and reaching out to the youth, we're reconnecting, now that we're seeing COVID way back in our
Mhm.
It's been good to reconnect with them, like, some of us are getting back out coaching, I've been on the ice. Being huge concern there, but schools are keeping in touch with us as far as about packing through it.
And is it high, low?
I would say low,
Okay,
very low.
okay,
I mean, there are at risk, there always will be
for sure. Yeah.
for our community. and
Yeah.
I can't remember, but have we congratulated you in your recruitment efforts with your son?
Yes, right.
No,
So that was good of you. I hope it's a commission based and, but anyway, it was really nice to see and, you know, just, that was a nice story.
it's very cool, very excited. Proud moment.
Are we congratulating you for getting him out of the basement or off
No,
the
he was
depot?
upstairs.
He was upstairs.
Yeah. He's wanted this as long as I can remember, and it's so cool to finally see him there.
Yeah, so has he started the RCMP
Yeah, he's-
Academy already then?
He's 6 weeks in.
6 weeks in, okay.
Okay, you want to do a thing? Oh, okay, good. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. And I did have something else on my list, but I'll touch base with you one-on-one on that. Yeah, for sure. I think I asked Mr. Thomas to look into that one, so we'll talk later. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
It's the constant microwave or microphone switch here. That takes us to adoption of minutes of council meetings. There is a recommendation. Oh, where are we? Is that right? This one. Thank you. Minutes of the regular council meeting held November 15th. Moved by,
I have a question about that.
okay, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure that, because in the minutes, it reflects that council direct staff to rely on section 5.8B of the official community plan with the intent to receive cash in lieu of park dedications. So we passed that. It is in the official community plan.
Yes.
And so that's sort of the guiding principle. You're going to take that to the Trails Task Force and review that. But at the end of the day, when it's cash in lieu, council, will they still have that final decision when it's an either or? Or I just want to clarify that. I've had some questions, and what I thought, I want to make sure I was right.
Yes, council ultimately, my understanding of the process is staff provide this information to the developers. The developers respond to that, either offer specific land or offer specific sum of cash, and bring that information back to council.
Yeah.
If council wish to go in a different direction, I'm sure council can, but the issue of the OCD will also need to be addressed at that time as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think that there was some people read the headlines in the newspaper, and there was some miss, but we're all in accordance. So thank you very much. Okay, I can second those minutes.
Thank you. All those in favor? There we go. Nothing under items 9, 10. Moving on to unfinished business number 11. Reconsideration of tabled items. Staff report on website refresh. Any questions or comments? Okay. 37 East. Yeah, I was gonna have some comments on that.
You
so-
go first. Then I
No,
want
no.
no, I want to hear what you say first.
No, it's one of those things that 37 East, I mean, we're back into winter right now. We're heading into strategic planning. It would be interesting to me to see a little bit more of a phased in versus spending the whole pot there. I mean, we really do at some point need to get the Loggers Memorial a new home. Maybe a strip of land on there, but the whole full concept of spending all that cash on paving that parking lot and that sort of thing when we still have a lot of things going on and some development plans along that corridor that may come out of strategic planning. Go ahead. Councillor Sim.
Yeah, just to echo that, I certainly like the phased in, especially as it relates to the river trail there, because one of the things I was keen on was using that as the parking lot. so that we free up the traffic going into that neighborhood. So having that staged in, I think it would be really important. And I think it's actually just good for that community refresh in our part of the neighborhood, so to speak. Um, it just sets a really nice tone when you come to lively arts. You know, there's lots there. So I really would like to see the phased in and not see it just lie dormant for another year.
Yeah, so maybe we talk about that in the new year as far as specifics on that. I think another point on it's the development of this park was actually to be used to happen with Trans Mountain funding, not tax dollars for the
Yeah.
vast majority of it. There may have had to been a little bit thrown in there from taxation or other park funds. But another high demand park area for Clearwater that now we are almost wrapping up the Trans Mountain project is the pending dog park. There we might want to use some of this Trans Mountain funding for creation or development of that. So that's another reason why we need to have a larger conversation on that one. Anything further? Thoughts? You can always bring it up whenever you're ready. Draft anti-racial discrimination and anti-racism policy. This was provided free by Lidstone and Company. It's been tweaked a little bit and tailored by us locally here to fit Clearwater. It's good. It's basically the same thing as going in across the province in most jurisdictions. So. Staff report, proposal and principal sewer services related to DVP 2123. This one's a bit interesting. Or sorry, 2103. Thank you. Any thoughts or comments on that?
I'd like a refresh on it.
Yeah, maybe a comment from staff just explaining this for everybody.
Sure, this was a report brought forward with the idea of crossing services from the Eastern Homes area for the area on the west side of the Island Road, next to bring water and sewer service across the street. I will clarify that since this original report came forward, we have had to go back and triple check some of our records. They're conflicting information on hand. Have since confirmed water is available on the street. Both commercial property serviced with water.
So it is there.
It is there.
Wow. Okay.
We've had, it's an interesting setup. We've
Yeah.
had confirmed whether or not provincial registry for private well is still active, which at this point found out that it's likely not active, even though the registry say it is. From water with physical curb stop verification. That's an industry. Sewer, on the other hand, is still an outstanding issue. The council had decided when this report was brought forward to table it until a broader discussion could be about infrastructure.
Questions, Councillor Sim?
Yeah, not so much a question, but I think I still feel the same, is that I really want to dig into our infrastructure master plan. Certainly, you know, get a handle on some of the proposed development. It's a big ticket item. And how does it all fit together, and what's the cohesive plan for the community,
Yep.
as opposed to just a few areas. Yeah, I went back to read the infrastructure master plan. It's super exciting there, but dated and definitely needs that. So to me, the priority is getting that up to date with some new measurables and
Yeah.
targets.
Yes, and I agree with that. And considering we have to do some upsizing of water lines in that area as well for capacity throughout our system, that's a good one. And once again, you kick the ground, you find a piece of infrastructure in the ground in Clearwater that you may not have known was there. So thank you on that one. Further on that one? If not, the Clearwater Mining Hockey presentation on, what was it? Rapid Shot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Yeah. So that is on there as well. That's another one under consideration. We, as discussed, we have some complications with the whole thing there because we don't own the sportsplex. It's on school board land, etc. So further. months. I'm sure it's gonna come back in the new year as part of, yeah, planning and things like that as well on that one.
And budget?
I'm sure it's probably gonna come, Mr. Thomas, go right ahead.
So the NFRP Association needs to communicate what the funding is and whether or not they have a specific ask.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Reconsideration of deferred items. There is nothing under that. It's the blank chart on the back page. Moving on to 11.3, extension of the strategic plan by 1 year. Discussion. Would you like to discuss? Anybody? Go ahead.
I've looked at the strategic plan. So are we going to meet a little bit more to talk about changes that need to be made for the year?
Certainly can, if council is interested in extending it for 1 year, yes.
Yeah.
I can help.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's you. Me.
Councillor Sim.
Just got a promotion, or you got
Yeah.
a promotion. So my thought is I appreciate the strategic plan. I'd like to dig in a little bit more with the elected council that we have. There's some mission and values things that I wouldn't mind tightening up that are reflective of where we are now. The task load within the strategic plan, I think there's some things there that can be dropped actually.
Yeah.
And I'd like to discuss that. The bare bones, the meat and potatoes, they work. And I think that we can really work off that. If anything, it's to be more specific and targeted with how we do. I really like the idea of rolling it over for another year, because I'm wondering if then the next strategic plan would carry over so that the council coming in for 2026 would have a starting place, which I think is helpful for everybody. So that's why I wouldn't mind digging into this just a little bit deeper. In principle, I want to keep what we've got and just put up some drapes and maybe take out some carpets or something.
All tools. Councillor Herring.
So to clarify, what you're saying is this is sort of improving the temporary, so we're moving this to temporary for the next year, right? Like we're extending this for another year so that we can engage in the strategic planning program for the next 4-year period. But you're saying you want to meet before then to discuss the old plan and sharpen
Just
it up.
To tighten it up,
Oh,
I
okay.
think that there's a lot of projects on here that we might have some second thoughts on, but if we pass it, then it's still living. And I would like to revise that. And I'd like to just also make sure that this new council has its signature on it. I think an afternoon workshop on it would be enough and just clarify some things. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I read through it there and had a look at a lot of stuff. It's amazing how much the community has changed in the last 4 years. And a lot of stuff that was applicable 4 years ago has changed.
Yeah.
So I think having a look at it and like you say, tightening it up would be a great idea.
Anything for Councillor Herring?
So does that mean we need like a workshop for that? Is that a
I'd
separate
like
thing?
to see one.
Okay, so question of staff when we get to this point. If we don't pass this right now, what happens?
Council is operating without a strategic plan. And that's not a bad thing if it happens.
Yeah.
It's just the projects that are put forward in the 2023 financial plan largely derived from what's in place. Some of those projects have boards. So what staff is looking for is this still important for us to finish, or does council want to redirect resources and basically change the project list? Either cancel some of those projects even though they're started, or not start some that are scheduled to start.
Okay, so if we were to say everything that is underway currently continues, would you need a motion on that? Okay, okay. Because having read this as well, I have no problem actually passing this, fully understanding that we can get rid of it once we have another one ready to go.
Sorry.
But there are still a few items that are underway here. Yeah, I've been through it. It's astounding the amount of stuff that's actually been accomplished in this already. Under item 1, but there's also some, I've crossed out so many things, either as completed, underway, being looked at, things like priorities, complete a visioning and rebranding process, community sessions. I fully see that as being part of our next OCP
Mhm.
run. Software changes to maintenance strategies for so many different things. Sewer expansion for Dutch Lake and Brookfield is not a priority, but we definitely have other priorities under sewer and that sort of thing. But there are still some things here that need to continue on. So yes, it needs a heck of an edit. Some of the files or items that we were targeting need to be, the priorities have switched, but it's essentially the same item, like sewer expansion into other areas. But I want to make sure that we go forward protecting what is already underway, because that would be a shame if we were to lose that before getting the next thing in place. So
Well,
yes,
but we won't lose it. I mean, sure, there's no operating, thing, but we also will be using a budget that we haven't passed yet either. So, we still have a guide, right? Like no one's going to stop because we aren't going to pass it.
no, but if we made a motion to say continue with everything in the strategic plan that is already
Okay.
funded or planned and underway.
Okay.
Does that work, Mr. Thomas?
That would work.
Okay. Okay. And then the second part of that motion could be to early next year,
Like January,
January,
ideally.
February, if we can't do,
January.
because it really, we couldn't plan anything now. I
Mm-mm.
mean, we're out of time for this calendar year, so. Somebody want to make that first motion that we continue on with all projects that are currently in the funded and underway in the current strategic plan? Okay,
Does that make sense?
does that work?
So maybe
A little
something.
wordsmithing on that?
To approve the strategic plan items that are already in progress, noting a finalized strategic plan will be completed January 2023. Too vague?
So completing the strategic plan in January, unless other priority shifts, might be a tall order. We have to, one, secure consultant,
No consultant.
No, we're just.
No.
but council has to make that decision yet. Once a consultant or once in-house, that's great. It's in January 3rd, which means the package needs to be developed. And the second meeting is January 17th.
How about March 31st? We have a construction season coming up. Councillor Herring.
So I think there's confusion. I think what you're talking about, Councillor Sim, is this workshop to just tighten up the objectives from this year's strategic plan. And then you're talking about the broader strategic plan for next term, right? With the consultant, or am I missing the piece here?
You probably have it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So January would be to actually reduce staff workload in the strategic plan, in the
Yeah.
current one.
That's what.
And then the next 4-year strategic plan, we can attack that in late spring or something. But the motion is to accept the items already in progress or actioned for the purpose of budgeting.
In progress funded,
Yeah.
underway. Okay, you're moving that. Staff can clean up the wording on that in the motion. Not really. Would you,
May I ask that the
would you
councillor
like-
moving the motion? make
Yes.
The motion for the record.
thank you. Michael, can you read back what you've got so far so that we can clarify it? This happens all the time at the TNRD, by the way. And that a workshop to discuss the current items in the current strategic plan happen sometime in the month of January. Yeah, by the end of January. Thank you. That's an end date, right? See, look at it. We did some wordsmithing. Does that work for you, Councillor Frizzle? Do we have a seconder on that? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bratton. All those in favor? And then we'll start the strategic plan next year as well. Mr. Thomas.
There's also the opportunity for council to strike a strategic plan working group under the Government Operations Committee to steer that process and develop what that package could look like with staff. It's an option. It's not a requirement.
Okay. Do we need to do that today? No. Do you want to strike a work group and get staff to work on that? So yeah.
Would that be for this one or for the
For the next one.
following?
For the next one. Yeah. Let's leave that alone for now. We'll get through today. Thank you. That passed. That's not the amendment in file. Financial updates, page 37 to 43 of your agenda package. Any questions of staff on that? We're doing pretty good. Looks good. This is, we've already, the council's already seen this. Councillor Herring.
So I just wanted to clarify, as far as revenues, we're sitting good, but expenditure, we have quite a bit of variance in our budget. And I wanted to clarify, that was what we talked about last time, that most of that, the transfers to reserves and surplus happens at the end of the year. Am I understanding that? Or why is that number in variance under expenditures so high?
A lot of it is because, first of all, we haven't done our projects, a lot of those projects, so it's. And, choose at the end of the year, next down. Level of budget.
Further questions on that? I really look forward to this software thing coming up. Go ahead.
So I think
Councillor
it's
Sim.
also important to note that this is as of September the 30th too.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So it's not the full year, right?
Correct.
Okay, on page 44 of your agenda, starts a report on public engagement.
You have to do the motion now.
Oh, sorry. There's a recommendation, sorry, on that one, to receive. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Thank you. 11.4 passed. Financial plan, our public engagement, 11.5 on your agenda. Questions of staff? Councillor Sim?
So on this, I think that December, it's a tough time to get a lot of engagement. Perhaps if we did cookie decorating or something like that. But what I am hoping is, I remember a few years back is that there was the presentation and then it was loaded onto the website. There was the opportunity to feedback. It would be nice if we could bolster some sort of attendance at the workshop or at the budget night, that engagement, whether it be that we advertise that there are going to be sort of refreshments and different snacks, and doing that maybe the first 15 minutes are going to be a presentation and then 30 minutes for general public to walk through. Like, how can we shake it up so that people know that they're welcome?
Yes, I hear you on all those points. After how many of these now? Good luck, but
well, I do
yeah.
think that certainly what we heard through the election period is that people want to know. So as long
Yeah.
as our communications officer has got a good strategy to relay that out, I think that's important to bolster it. Also to make sure that we are publicizing the date once we confirm it today and making sure that that goes out. And then if there is a way just to make it a bit more of a social as opposed to a sit down. And I also think that we had some success when it was live streamed that one time as well. And you know what, as long as we're doing all that we can to do engagement, I mean, we'll leave it at that, right? But that's kind of our role, and it's one of the things that we do commit to in this strategic plan is that engagement with the public.
Further comments, questions on that? Councillor Frizzle?
I like the idea of the live streaming if possible, because especially in December, people are more likely to sit in their living room and watch it than drive out at whatever, 6 o'clock at night. But is there a possibility on that for questions to be asked through that? That's
Okay.
important.
Thank you.
May I just share
Yes,
a few ideas that I'm thinking for December 13th?
we love ideas. Fire away.
So, we were thinking that we would, and one councilor station leader as well, and
Oh.
in between those, we would be looking to provide a little bit of a video saying what we do with the budget, how it's developed, and then maybe perhaps some projects. So we're just working with that now. And
Great
so
idea.
this little video thing will be playing on one of the stations. And then in some of the other stations where you staff and talking about projects. So the main focus is to share knowledge, what we do when we put together a budget. We're looking for feedback and having a feedback station. So I'm hoping that council would participate. And I'm hoping our staff will also be as well. You know, budget's not, budget is tough, but people want to participate.
Excellent.
Great ideas, great ideas.
It's fantastic. So then it's up to, thank you for your ideas.
Mhm.
I love it. Then it's up to council as your wonderful social promotional selves. Once we see basically the plan of that night to get it out there, drum up support, drum up interest. You know, everything short of, you know, offering free cookies, but there will be free cookies, to get people out to attend that. And then that's really the role that we can play at this table is promoting that. Cool.
like it.
Excellent. Thank you. So that there's a recommendation that council approves phase 1 of the public engagement plan and directs staff to begin implementation of phase 1 of the public engagement plan. Blah. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Seconded by Councillor Sim. All those in favor? Okay. And then item 11.6 on pages 48 to 51, financial plan schedule or schedule, depending on who you are. Any questions on that? And these things are generally revised on and off as changes as come up or deadlines need to shift. So
I do have one.
yeah, Councillor Sim.
So when you were discussing the time for it, is the one thing that I've heard a lot of lately is that people who don't want to get out in the evenings to drive, and this is such an interactive one. Was there consideration to doing like a 4 to 6 or a 5 to 7, noting that we are never going to get it right? Like there's people, this town is busy and there's all sorts of different things, but I didn't know if that had come up as a thought or if anybody else had anything, because the concept is so good. It's tough. You're never going to win.
Yeah. I really actually do like the 6 to 8. We quite often wait until 6:30 or 7 to start, and then people are butting up against television, and people are more than willing to miss the news and come to our things. So if they're wrapped up and back
Okay.
home after before Wheel of Fortune and after Jeopardy or what vice versa, I think we're usually pretty good. But yes, I think we can see what happens this time and maybe adjust for the next one. Can I get a motion to approve the amended 2023 financial plan schedule as attached? Moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Thank you. Excellent work on all that. Thank you. Public and statutory hearings, proposed notice and title 433 Eden Road. I'll let staff speak to that.
Building inspector has been working with the property owner. Fortunately, this goes back several years, and there's some work that was allowed, work that continued even though a stop work order was issued, and thus they are presenting to council the option of moving forward. Have notice of title in the event that the property wishes to sell this property in the future, to flag this as a potential non-compliance issue for the client. We do know that there are several businesses operating within that space without an occupancy issue, and that's certainly something council may consider in the future. Perhaps from a liability perspective, because business licenses are being issued supposed to be occupied. But other than that, we have notified the property owner that this will be going forward to council today and to present information.
Did we get any correspondence or any feedback that on the record from the property owner? Okay. Okay, so they are aware that this is going to happen. That is the process. Yeah. Okay. And in your package, there is quite a long, a lengthy back and forth with the owner. You have photos, you have all sorts of detail of violations on page 56 of 206. So are there any questions of staff? You
A
can,
general question?
you can ask a general question. I can,
How does someone who doesn't have occupancy permit allow businesses to engage in business in a building in our town?
you would have to ask the property owner specifically on that one.
We don't ever step in.
This is stepping in.
Oh.
This is the process for stepping in. But it does bring up a larger discussion outside of this particular section 57. That has been brought up by numerous members of the community, which is what are the teeth behind our business licensing?
Mhm.
What does it allow us to do, and do we work on that?
Right.
Our businesses licensing in Clearwater, even with the multi-jurisdictional thing that we're working through right now, is very, very fresh compared to most municipalities that have decades of legal on that. So in this case, a lot of the incentive behind business licensing was to set up a method for fire inspection and things like that. We've had some fires over the last few months in town that show you the need to do things by the book, and I think that's one thing that would concern me about this building. As far as what it actually means to have a section 57 on your title, maybe I'll get staff to explain what the legal consequences, what the financial consequences a little bit are on that, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Thomas.
I'm not sure of the financial consequence at this point without having this facts to discuss, but what I can say is having it on title informs potential buyers that prior to purchasing the property, at least District of Clearwater is aware that there's a non-compliance issue. They are aware that there is a non-compliance issue and the obligation to resolve that issue should they purchase the property.
If they have a section 57 and any of the current businesses move out, are they allowed to take in new businesses?
We will require a bylaw legislative to take any action.
I see.
And I have not done an assessment to disallow this.
Okay.
Just curious, what would be the legal blowback to the district where you have businesses operating in Section 57 building?
I'm not aware of any particular risk at this point. It would be something built, get an assessment on. Keep in mind, there are many businesses operating in Clearwater. Matter of fact, as I was coming in, previous one did not have occupancy, but that was a requirement. That choose for obvious reasons. But what are the legal ramifications? I would have to explore those.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what sort of liability the district would be exposed to. I can't quite wrap my head around what it would be, but you know, if they have a fire in there and we've issued a business license and they're working in the building that doesn't have an occupancy permit, are we exposed at all? That sort of scenario.
Yes, yeah, and I think somebody from our contract services, other jurisdictions around here do a heck of a lot of Section 57s. We were for quite a while in Clearwater, and we haven't had them on a regular basis. But yeah, there are some ramifications. Councilor Frizzle, did you have a further question?
With those businesses that are in there right now, if we pass this, would they be notified that this building was under a Section 57? Is that a requirement?
Not to my knowledge, a requirement for the district of Clearwater to take private property. And of course, the decision of council is being made to meeting, which brings us into all. But as for specific notifications,
No.
We're not required to do that.
Councilor Herring.
For me, I support the Section 57 on this property from what I can see. What I also want to talk about is maybe we need to have that conversation about legislative teeth with our business licensing and also with our utilities and things like that. I think it's time to change the tone around Clearwater's enforcement. If we're going to have rules, we should be able to do something about it. So I think maybe that's a conversation for strategic planning next year, but it needs to be a priority, I think.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, and I agree. Further on that, I will say a Section 57 on title is generally looked at by banks when somebody is trying to purchase, and it can affect the ability of the purchaser to attain a mortgage on such properties. Another positive comment on Section 57s is with the housing market and the property value market over the last few years, there's been, I believe, an 80% reduction of existing Section 57s in the TNRD covered jurisdictions because there was so much value in the property market that people cleaned up outstanding Section 57s in order to sell their properties. So it used to be the feeling when we put one of these things on that people would not deal with them for years and years and years, and people will preemptively start dealing with them just to prepare their properties for future resale because there is so much equity value in the system. Anyways, there is a recommendation there. Does somebody wish to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Matheson. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. Did I miss a question? Would you like to follow up? No? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks. And you can always ask. This is a good one for a small 20-minute workshop to go through because everybody needs to refresher on this one. So the next time that we have somebody from planning services up here, it's a good one to have. And Regina from the TNRD is incredibly well versed at talking about Section 57. So thank you. Moving on to Mayor's report. 23rd, 24th, 25th was at the TNRD training sessions. A lot of new faces in the room. I think there was 19 new people at the TNRD out of 27. Kamloops added a new counselor / director to that, so they're now up to 7. Weighted voting was also put in, which would take a long time to explain in this room. But there are some news articles out there, and it affects counselors from the city of Kamloops or directors from the city of Kamloops who now will be required on financial issues will be required and will have more votes per director than EA directors or municipal directors. But a good turnaround. Odd thing on that one, and the current year portrait for the TNRD, I wasn't there, so I am photoshopped in. It's a little out of body experience. I'm in the corner. It's my head on somebody else's body. I got taller, but I didn't lose any weight. Lots going on, but I'll stick to this weekend and I'll let all of you glow about all the wonderful things that happened. Went to the daycare open house at the other end of the hallway, met somebody there who moved to town because of the Aboriginal Society and how strong it is here, from Burnaby, and the fellow actually went to high school with me.
Oh, it's getting to a smaller and
So the
smaller
small town. Cram the Cruiser, excellent. Volunteers brunch, fabulous. I'll let you all glow on those. And one final thought, just to note the sad passing of Captain Melanie Savage of the Blackpool Volunteer Fire Department. Council reports. We'll start from the beginning. Councillor Brad.
So I wasn't as active as everyone else. I had to miss the weekend festivities. I had grandchildren, so they got in the way there this weekend. But we, on December 2nd, had a council orientation with Tracy Lorenzen. And we learned a lot about our own personalities and how they relate to our new positions. She gave us insights on how to handle situations among colleagues and staff and public, and to keep life in a healthy, positive position. It was a lot of great insight. I really, really appreciated it. I'm on a summit, and I don't have the correct term for this, the cemeteries committee. And I have talked to Tammy King, who is also, I want to say, the chair of that group. And we're going to be meeting this week and next week, or she's a main person. Sorry if I'm got this out of whack. And a very good vibe story. Young fellow Landon, who's in grade 12, he did a Clearwater coat drive, and he did very, very well, all on his own. He asked his mom if he could do this for the town, and he was very successful in collecting a bunch of coats, and he gave some to our food bank, and the rest went to the mustard seed in Kamloops, and he had a nice write-up Twitter and their news stories. So that was pretty cool. Because he did that, he kind of spurred me along, and the Boys and Girls Club in Kamloops was looking for blanket drive. So I decided that I would try, because that's super simple to do. And a bunch of people gave me a bunch of blankets. So I took that into Kamloops to the Boys and Girls Club. So something I would like to learn is if any of that, how sad, I don't know if it's needed. If we have groups that are in need for that kind of thing, I would like to get involved with that kind of thing. Anyways.
Yeah, excellent. Good on you. Yes, there's probably a good conversation sometime just to go down and set up a meeting with the heads of the local food bank and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they could do that, but it's best to call ahead.
For sure.
The polite thing.
Oh,
is to
yeah,
call
yeah.
ahead. Yeah. Just because there's so many new people in some jurisdictions that's not happening.
Yeah, for sure.
But thank you for that, and that's awesome that you did that. Councillor Herring.
All right, for me, yeah, I went to the orientation on the 2nd. Also attended the volunteer appreciation on the weekend. The brunch, I thought it was great. I was unfortunately unable to make the afternoon, so someone else will have to tell us how that went. But the morning was great. Aside from that, tonight's a ski hill board meeting, and earlier in late December there, we had a show at the ski hill. It was pretty successful. We had, I believe it was like 38 people come out to the concert there. So they've still got some momentum building, and hopefully we'll have more of those shows at the ski hill. That's all I got for the month.
I just would like to say that the volunteerism in our town is extremely resourceful and people do help out a ton and we appreciate it. And I didn't get a chance to say that. I really appreciate all the volunteers in our town.
Yeah, that was a fabulous morning event there, and you know the afternoon event, there was a good turnout from the volunteer clubs and that sort of thing, and it was well organized and that sort of thing. It's just you know, we had a discussion with the economic development person before, and at that weekend when that stuff was being planned, there was nothing going on. And by the time we got to this past weekend, I don't think you could have fit something in with a shoehorn. Councillor McKenzie is keeping the economy running on two rails, some broken, some not. Councillor Matheson.
All I can say is I had a major sugar problem this weekend with all the events going on. Yeah, it was a busy weekend. I was at the with the MC at the Food Bank Christmas concert, which was an outstanding success. It was a full house and standing room only around the edges. The food bank, between the Cram the Cruiser with the RCMP and the donations there, the bake sale and ticket sales for the event, they raised close to $5,000 and 900 pounds of food. So it was very, very successful, and there was no baking left over at the end of the day. It was, they had people texting from Kamloops, putting in orders, and people coming in and buying boxes of stuff to take back to Kamloops. So this is how popular it's become. It was interesting in the music venue. There was a new band that's just started up, a couple locals that have moved into town and kind of strumming the strings and doing some singing, amazing voices and talent. The high school, the Jay Walkers, I think they're called now. I think that was their first public performance, and they rocked it. They did really well. It's interesting, when they booked them, they didn't have a name. They said, well, what's your name? And they went, well, we don't really have one. So they mumbled on the phone for a little bit and said, well, we're the Jaywalkers. So it's the Jaywalkers it is. And then they performed again at the volunteer brunch in the afternoon. And it was kind of personal for me because they played In the White House by Cream. And it's the first time I've heard it played live in 40 years. And they did an outstanding job of it. They really got into it. So that event was really interesting. What I took away from that, it was, you know, what I found with the volunteers there that were all there, I think there were 70 plus. They were very humble about being honored, and it wasn't so much about them being honored. Most of them ended up using it like a networking event. And it was amazing. I walk around and you know, they said, oh, I need to talk to you because so-and-so said, you know, and it was an amazing networking event. And I think in the future, we could look at it as a volunteer networking event because that's what they were doing. And the ideas were being thrown and conversations were going on. It was pretty energizing. So it was a really, really good success. I've attended a couple Zoom conferences with the Climate Caucus and the Canadian the Climate Action Committee with the government. And one interesting thing I took away, we addressed heat pump affordability, where the government has been putting out all these things saying you can get so many rebates back if you put in a heat pump, but it has to be installed by a contractor. Yeah, most people are finding that if they do it themselves, it costs less than if they get the rebates back. And for people that are not able to do it themselves, it's a barrier. So we suggested ways of looking at to help low-income families, people that are struggling to be able to afford this and make it happen for them. And so they're going to take that back and see what they could figure out, because it is a definite barrier toward people being able to change from propane or oil and going to a heat pump. The rebates are great if you've got the money to get a contractor to do it and you get the money back. But if you don't have the money to hire the contractor, and that's key on putting in a heat pump, is you have to have a contractor do it in order to get the rebate back. So people are just going, well, we can't afford to put out that kind of money. So that's, they're looking at it anyhow. It was brought up. And Christmas tree light up last night at the Information Center was really well attended, probably more people than have been there in the last 4 years. And there was a lineup of kids and parents there that were stretching quite a ways into the parking lot, and there was no parking room left anywhere. It was, and a lot of new faces in town. Like before, you know, I'd go there and I'd know a lot of the kids and the parents and stuff, and I'm looking around going, I don't know anybody here. So there's definitely been a shift in our community. Yeah, big time. So that was my weekend.
Thank you. That's a lot. And thank you for emceeing on Friday night. That sounded like a heck of a good event. Councillor Sim, nothing to add, right?
Nothing to add, I know. Actually, just two inquiries for staff, certainly not for discussion now, but just as takeaways. I had a citizen write and just ask, is the three-way stop at Bilo intuitive or should it be revisited? So I know we've had that discussion around this table before, and I just said that I would raise it. I don't know where to go from there. I can forward the email if you want, but I do know it's come up around that. And the other one was just checking in that with our new coordinator, is there going to be a user group meeting with the curling club, and just looking to enhance that membership and that. So I said I would raise that. And leave it there. In terms of what was happening last Friday, the Ski Hill had their Christmas market, which was probably the best one that they've had as well, which was really good. The evening of the 3rd, there was also the Dr. Helmken staff party. Best takeaway there was not only were people table dancing, but they had a good time. But it was the fact it was one of the first time in years that they have seen one another without their masks on. And from that standpoint, I know it was just the social connection that they found really, really valuable. So that was a great one. Just also to the food bank and evening, and I just want to throw out there in the tradition of council is that we make a donation for $1,000 to the food bank out of council contingency. Recognizing from past reports that although it's been a generous community, that they are looking ahead, that there's going to be some shortages. So I do make that motion in the spirit of past.
We have available funds in council contingency, maybe? Can we confirm that?
We likely do.
Okay.
Does Councillor Sim want to put this as a notice of motion?
You want to do it as a notice of motion? Because I don't think they need funds. You could put it forward as a notice motion to the next meeting that it comes forward as a formal motion is probably the best way, just so that we can confirm that we have the funding.
True. Whatever my colleagues feel is best. Typically, this is where we've done it, and I'm pretty sure there's money in council contingency. But I think what's even better about having it as a notice of motion is in January there real need will start. How about that?
And it'll be on the agenda, or be in the minutes and the agenda probably
Notice of
twice.
motion now noted.
So-
I also just want to welcome all the new Evergreen residents to it. So thank you very
Yoo-hoo.
much to the work that was done on there in getting that moved forward. And I think that if we do our financial engagement, we should just team up with Rotary or the food bank and do it that day, right? You just go from budget to the party. Just kidding. The events that are coming up is that the Ski Hill is having their final fundraiser of 2022 on December the 16th. It's a really important fundraiser. I think the insurance we're looking at is likely going to be over $24,000 to $25,000. So it is a really, really great band. It's $20. The Serious Dogs, they certainly got everybody dancing on the weekend. So just having that community participation and a great way to set the stage. Also the community Christmas dinner on December 24th. That's getting some great interest, a lovely group of volunteers, and I am hoping that it might be listed in the newsletter for December, which has been typically done. So I think that's about it. And other than that, echo everybody else. But I do want to do a special shout out to the staff for the appreciation brunch.
Yeah.
It was really lovely to see how they all work together. Lots of little touches. Number one comment was just how appreciated people felt. They didn't want to go because it was such a busy time, but it was actually a really nice reprieve that gave them a second wind. The atmosphere was really nice. And just the thoughtfulness of some of the things like the cards. And watching the team work together and get all that decorating done, it was great. I think we're really lucky, and I want to say thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Excellent comments all around. Okay. Any further comments or questions before we move on? Nope. CAO report on 62 to 68, item 15.1. You have any questions? Sorry, does council have any questions of the CAO? Start off with Councillor Sim.
Not necessarily a question, but certainly a comment directed to my colleagues is just to see if you notice the council and standing committee schedule is we've got a lot to do with government operations in sort of the first quarter, but we don't have the community economic development or the parks and recreation till a bit later. It doesn't mean that those meetings can't be had under the new structure. So, you know, especially if we're in that budget thing, just draw your attention to that we can fit that in still, that we've got that flexibility there. And just to work with the CAO on that, especially if anything bubbles up under the budget or initiatives, or as it ties into a lot of those things are under our strategic plan. And do we want to see those things for a little closer in the year?
Yeah, excellent comments. Anything else? Once again, a tremendous amount of work. There's some very exciting little details in here under administration, Questicus software. There was more than a few things that I saw in here that were just, yay, we're getting things done. I did note the water system breaks and things like that because I drove by them the days that it happened. So, and we're fixing the Zamboni, and that makes everybody happy. The word Zamboni and the fact that we're fixing it. So, all good. Thank you for that. And thank you for all the hard work of staff from all the different departments there. Moving on to new business staff reports. Amend reserve and surplus policy number 1804, and we'll let staff speak to that. That is on page 69 to 79 of your agenda. Just maybe a basic explanation for.
Page 69, if everyone can turn to page 69, that would be great. The confirmation will be there.
Thank you.
During the November workshop, we had identified some of the challenges with septage receiving the fund in particular, and the need for, or not need, but if council was interested, the option of council to amend the current bylaw and policy to allow council more flexibility where those surpluses from sections. From that workshop, council had directed that we remove on turn to page 70 in that table language about the level of, or the rationale for the level of the funding source. It identified 30% of prior year operating surplus. The level will be dependent on the prior year's department surplus. That language committed the district to moving that from operating capital. Bylaw before you implement.
Okay. Any questions on that? And this stems a lot from the fact that for this specific reserve, or one of these specific reserves, that we took a lot of money in for an area that we don't need to fund a lot. So there is a recommendation there. Anybody wish to move? Thank you. Seconded. Further discussion? Not all those in favor. Thank you. 16.2, rescinding in-camera reporting policy. Pages 80 to 82, and maybe speak to why we're doing this.
This report is to address what has become a redundant policy position of the District of Clearwater. This particular policy has been incorporated into the existing revised District of Clearwater future bylaw, and we're seeking decision from council and direction whether or not the policy should remain or consider it already incorporated into the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. If it is, then that sounds good. Comments or questions of staff? Questions to staff? Not, when you're ready, I'm moving her in a seconder on this. So if it's in a different policy, we don't need it twice, basically is what we have.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by, somebody put your hand up. Thank you, Councillor Bratton. All those in favor, and that's good. Budget and reporting software. One of these changes that I love. Staff comments, because this is exciting.
So before you have a recommendation for council to pre-approve the budget software project to implement trust account operations capital and open book modules, if we're on page 83.
Staff on this. We've all seen the presentations on this. This is basically taking us in line with a lot of other local governments and out of sort of the infancy of financial management software here. Councillor Frizzle.
My only question is, if we approve this, how long before you can actually have it?
Well, it will be after our financial budget season. Once that is implemented, start May. A lot of the time will be spent, I'll be probably spending 1 day a week, but a lot of the time.
But as soon as you get it up and running, you'll probably, as you populate stuff into one system, is there an opportunity, or are you just going to start from scratch?
It will populate, it'll be integrated with our maze accounting system.
Okay, right now.
The work will be to ensure that all those accounts are aligned with the. And once those are aligned, those will be coming forward to the reporting mechanism.
Thank you.
How long before you're fully operational in the new system? If you start in May, would it be done this year?
I'm
Or,
not sure,
sorry,
I'm
not this
sure
year,
if I can commit-
2023.
I'm not sure I can commit that everything would be done by December 31st.
Okay,
But for sure, we would go through, we would prioritize what's important.
Right.
To the process.
okay,
So that we can start building a budget.
Yeah.
With the new software. That's really my goal.
okay,
Build a budget with the new software.
nice.
Excellent. Thank you. Further comments, Mr. Thomas?
Part of the reason why we don't know with that this will be completed in. Once an organization starts a project like that, it often requires through this budget process, learned budget is housed on their ICBC best place for that. As an example.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, there is a double part recommendation there. Somebody wish to move it?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? That passes. Item 16.4, dissolution of the Economic Development Task Force. Questions, comments from staff before we get into this?
Yeah, I don't know if staff wants to speak to this at all.
The Economic Development Task Force.
We'll let Ms. Bystead come forward. These things generally are supposed to last for 1 year with renewals, but ours has gone on for a couple of years, but we've also struggled through COVID, but Wiley, fire away when you're ready.
Thank you. So, so as presented in the information starting on page 86, asking for the task force to be rescinded. The task force in its time did some really great work, particularly around the Economic Development Strategic Plan. However, since my arrival, we had meetings with the task force early on in the spring, but quite frankly, have not had great success with getting the task force to continue, to attend meetings, to respond. And so that combined with the fact that they've really done what those early objectives of the task force were, has led us to say that there are other ways for us to approach this that will be successful in moving the strategic plan forward.
Questions of staff from council? Councillor Sim, go ahead.
So I just have a couple of questions. One is, I just note also going through the grant that the District of Clearwater had received. And I just want to make sure that the Community Economic Development Task Force isn't tied in any way to those grant requirements.
No, it's not.
Okay. The second thing is that I think that, you know, I went back through all the minutes for the Community Economic Development Task Force, and I do note that the last time that there were minutes there was for April 2022. And in that meeting, there was really good, robust discussion, as you've kind of alluded to. And to me, I don't know through COVID and that if there was, it wasn't an unwillingness, it just stalled and stuttered, I'm going to say. But I do believe that the last meeting where people were coming is that had to be canceled at the last minute. So I think that the group wasn't able to connect. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to completely buy in the work. The group has done the work that they were intended to, because they didn't really meet fulsomely enough to kind of get there. What they did do on the April 22nd or in 2022 is they had a great discussion that actually ties into the two working groups that have been proposed, which is the Housing Growth Working Group and the Infrastructure Planning and Development. And based on those minutes, it seems that those community members have got some great input on it. And so rather than just rescinding is just citing that is where the work is going to expand onto based on their input. But yeah, I would like a letter that maybe it's not what we need right now. I just don't wouldn't want to see a letter going out that they've done the work that they've done. The meetings don't support it. And I mean, I think it's Councillor Frizzle has said, you know, because there's been lots of gaps and lots of growth, we had to be determined meetings, dates on those things an awful lot. So I think it just needs to be thank you and we want to do better. And I think that that's on us as the district, not on the committee members by any stretch.
For sure. And you know, with the new surveys, the business walk and things like that, we're evolving the way that we're checking in. And I think it's our duty as counselors as well to be, you know, how's things, how's business, what's your concerns, and bring that back to the table as well. But yeah, thank them for the work, and it was a tough time to try to get it done.
Yeah, I think if we can just transform that great local knowledge, I mean, especially under the Housing Growth Working Group and the Planning and Development, we've talked about that, about getting people that have a forward vision of the community all in the same room as we talk about our infrastructure master plan.
And
I
OCP.
think that there's probably some really strategic ways that we can utilize that citizen input and expertise and also their ideas, but just reformat it in a way that's engaging for everybody.
Excellent comments. Anything further on that? If not, can I get somebody to move that 3-part recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Matheson. Seconded by. Thank you, Councillor Herring.
And the discussion.
Discussion.
Yeah, and again, just for me, that yes, it does need to be, you know, it does need to evolve into that next step. But just mention that there will be other opportunities for that voice, because it matters. And they had stepped forward through. I mean, I think the first one was on a Zoom call early on in COVID. So I mean, it couldn't get much more miserable from how it started. So
yeah,
just to really make sure that
it's not fun. You can't eat baby quiches or mini quiches on a Zoom call. Anyways,
no.
Back to Councillor Matheson's comments about the volunteer thing. One thing that I did get out of the corner of my ear or talk to a bit was the desire of the chamber to strengthen. So I think that is one thing that can come out of this as well, as a stronger chamber, and there seems to be a lot more steam there that we haven't seen in years there. So,
And I think that the council's also got a representative on the Chamber of Commerce this round. So I think that's an exciting way to also bolster it, just showing the evolution of how economic development is going in. Anyway.
okay,
Thank you.
further comments or thoughts? If not, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. Appointment of approving officer for 2023, three-part recommendation there. The council approves the extension of the appointment of R.E. Lee Dodds as the municipal approving officer for the District of Clearwater to December 31st. Council renew the service agreement effective January 1st to December 31st, 2023. No increase in rates. And council approves entering in a service provider agreement with the MIA to cover Lee Dodds as an associate member with the cost to be allocated from the 2023 planning budget. Are there questions of staff on this? Maybe a brief explanation
Yeah,
of what a
thank you.
planning officer, or sorry, approving officer does? Maybe, Mr. Thomas.
The approving officer is a statutory officer responsible for reviewing subdivision application on files and making decisions on behalf of the District of Clearwater in accordance with established bylaws and policies. And so without this person being designated, it would leave a serious gap in the organization. Mr. Dodd has many years of experience working with Clearwater, generally in the North Valley, and has been with the district for several years now, doing this work remotely. Over the last number of years, his workload has been relatively stable. However, I foresee the potential for significant file activity along the Park Drive corridor. His workload will certainly increase, and it's super important to have experience and expertise who knows the District of Clearwater's infrastructure.
Thank you. Yeah, it ties into OCP and all sorts of things. It keeps at arm's length from us. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Herring. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Tourism Wells Gray appointment. We do need a member of council on the Tourism Wells Gray. Councillor Frizzle has expressed an interest. Is there anyone else who wishes to maybe put forward an expression of interest? If you want to be the second, okay, we can do that. Councillor Frizzle and Councillor Herring can backfill for you. Is that okay? So I need that in recommendation for somebody to put that forward. Thank you. I'll recommend that not doing any more work at this table, or thing. Can I get a seconder on that one? Thank you, Councillor Matheson. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you for putting yourselves forward. That's excellent. Council resolution request for grant. Recommendation that council support submission of an application to UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Funds for the Indigenous Cultural Safety and Cultural Humility Training in the amount of $30,000, and the district staff provide the overall management of that grant. Maybe Mr. Thomas or somebody else, maybe just explain what this is about.
Thank you. If I can ask that everyone turn to page 94 of our package. What we're asking for today is under the recommendations, where staff is asking for council for a resolution of support for a grant application and a resolution that district staff will provide overall grant management. This grant provides funding for our EOC personnel and any other staff that contributes to emergency management to receive specialized training that focuses on Indigenous cultural safety and cultural humility. It's specifically part of the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action number 57, which specifically addresses the training of civil servants in regards to Indigenous history, safety, and humility. And so this is a funding stream provided by UBCM so that we can allocate funds to specifically address the training in the context of emergency management, so that we can look at how we can better partner with the local Indigenous First Nations people.
Okay, any questions on that? Go ahead, Councillor Herring.
Yeah, I think like reading through this one, I'm kind of split. I see a lot of things that I like about this program, but it's also an answer to a problem I didn't know we had, sort of thing. So I think this is one of those things that, you know, it looks great at a provincial level. Is this going to cost us $30,000 to go have a conversation that we could have with Simp now through an email, through a, you know, an opening of this door? Because I think I understand the goal of the reconciliation kind of component of this, but I also know from personal experience as a first responder in this area that our relationship with Simp is great and we work really well with them on emergencies. And in fact, I would say we have a lot to look up to in the way they manage emergencies. We could learn a ton from them. But my question is, this grant, how does this connect to the Simp? And how is it not just a general kind of mishmash?
You can try and answer that one if you want. It might be more of a philosophical question, but if you want to try to throw
Well,
something out.
I think that there was one thing that Councillor Herring said that is absolutely true. Simp do a really great job. And I think the flip side of this grant is that this provides us to even hire them to work with us and train our people to learn from them. And it doesn't have to be them. I'm just saying that yes, they're really good and we need to up our skill level.
Councillor Sim.
And have you had an opportunity to talk to them about how they feel about us applying for this grant?
No, but it's a provincial grant that everyone has been applying to, so.
I know, but I you know, just in the fact that, I mean, and I think the same that I share the concern of Councillor Herring, is that we hear a lot about when we create these opportunities, we create more workload on our staff, but we also create workload on our partners. And so I'm a bit uncomfortable moving forward with it without having even spoken to Simp in advance. That's, I'm not sure where that's sitting with me.
First, I'll ask a timeline question. What's the timeline on when does this grant close? When's timing for submission to this?
So this application actually closed November 25th.
Okay, so it's already in.
We completed an application and put it in.
Okay.
And so if council supports the resolution, we will provide that resolution to them now. They know what our timeline is. If we don't have support, then we will respectfully ask that our application be rescinded from the program. The program will run again and we will have the opportunity to apply again at another time, which, you know, may give us, you know, more time to address some of other councillors' concerns.
I'll make two comments on this. One, Sim First Nation, and yes, they are fantastic at what they do. They're probably miles ahead of us on emergency planning, so we actually do have a lot to learn from them. There's also Finesse, which is the First Nations emergency services. I think I've got that right, but that is a more of an umbrella organization that has developed over the last couple of years in BC that probably could do this for us, and that is what they do for a living. They started after the Lytton and Cache Creek and Hill fires, a lot of it based out of not Nisconlith, the other side, Skeecheson. Inspired by that anyways. So there's that opportunity. The other thing here is there is so much overlap on this. We will train people within our organization, but the training will apply to so much more than just emergency preparedness. We would get a lot out of this. At this point, if the grant's already been submitted, is there a timeline on spending this money?
Yeah.
Because if it's like a year or two, that's a long time to find a way to use this with the right partner if Simp is unavailable to do that.
Yes, so, so just to be clear, my example of SIMP was in response to Councillor Herring. Within the application, we didn't designate who the partners were. That wasn't a requirement of the application. And we do have all of the calendar 23 to complete this. So this isn't something that has to be done first quarter. We can do some planning around this and do it next fall.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Sim?
Yeah, and I was a bit concerned the same way, just because of the way the report reads, but not having read the grant proposal. And I mean, personally, I feel we should be doing this anyway as a call to action. I mean, that should even be in our budget, so to speak. I think that, I mean, I'll go forward and support this, knowing that at the C2C, if we are approved, it's a way to discuss how it's spent, and it's discussed collaboratively. We've got this pool of money, but the way it came across, I'm glad we've had this chance to clarify it, that we are not making assumptions of our neighbors.
It's a good discussion. I like a good discussion. Okay, anything further? If not, can I get somebody to move the recommendation? Somebody has to.
Or
I can't
not.
do it. Councillor Matheson, seconded. I need a seconder on that. If you second it, then we can do discussion. Thank you. It does die. So seconded by Councillor Bratton. Further discussion? Any further discussion? I think this is a good idea. I think the fact that we have a calendar year to figure out who we're going to partner with. Another comment would be that with the winding down of the Trans Mountain Pipeline in our area, having conversations about it elsewhere, there will be some capacity within SRG and other organizations that do this kind of work to help us with this kind of work, especially after midsummer next year. Further comments or discussion? Councillor Sim.
Just the fact that we can return the money if it's not used.
Absolutely. Good point.
Right?
Thank
So,
you.
so we can, and I think that as long as it's extended in the spirit of how the grant was written, you know, we've got money to come to the table with, as opposed to not.
That's an excellent point. All those in favor? Thank you. Project performance update. Staff report is in your items, pages 101 to 103. A lot of this has to do with trails, etc. Cell 1. Comments from staff? We're under budget on some, slightly over budget on a couple, remaining budget on a lot. Go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
Page 101. You get some. Starting at the discussion section of the report, Park Drive is a trails project, and intersection realignment project is about $16,659 over budget. We anticipate that work could be that cost could be absorbed under the roads program budget for the District of Clearwater. We had initially budgeted around $100,000, I believe, and I believe this additional amount would fit very well in there. The cost overrun on this project can be attributed to having to redo the Dutch Lake beach area twice. It was painted as the original scope of the project. We had to undo some work there and redo some line painting activities there as well. And so I believe that's where that money would be best suited. Turning the page on page 102, Dutch Lake Road and Highway 5 pathways. When those projects were funded under two separate grants, we made a strategic recommendation to council, and council agreed to tender both of those projects together to get economies of scale and a probability of having cost savings towards those projects. Again, the Highway 5 to Roundabout project was not 100% funded. I believe the maximum was about $350,000 roughly is what was allowed to be claimed as part of that grant. I had sent out a follow-up email to the Trails Committee and to Council outlining the specific funding for each of those programs. That project was also going to be funded with the use of gas tax to the tune of about 250,000. However, now we're looking at about 120 some odd thousand going towards gas tax rather than 200 plus. And this project has reached substantial completion and is also under budget, both of them. So the total we're looking at is about 300,000 under budget for both, but 200,000 is for the Highway 5 roundabout, and 99,000 is for the Dutch Lake pathways. The Dutch Lake pathways, when we're comparing the grant approval for that particular project, we had about $460,000 worth of grant on this project. We are down to about 54,000 remainder under budget, and we will be asking the province to transfer the surplus on this project to the Clearwater River Trail project to help fund some of the budget shortfalls that we will be experiencing on this project should council move forward with. SAL 1 Phase 2 is about 13,900 under budget. That's on page 103. This project should be reaching substantial completion by the end of the year. We're still working on this project at this time. So all to say, except for Park Drive, the district did very well with many of the major capital projects we had on the go. The three trails that reached substantial completion includes Dutch Lake, Highway 5 to Roundabout, and Park Drive. And cumulatively, those projects are under budget to the tune of almost $300,000. The only exception will be 16,000 over budget on the Park Drive one, and that's just over 1% cost overrun, but still on schedule. So from a project management perspective, that's a huge success for the district.
Thank you. Are there any questions? And I believe further on that, you've asked for the ability to transfer. Is that this one?
Right now, we have, one of the requests the province had was to send an updated budget document laying out the costs, etc. We have prepared what those would look like and send it out to the Trails Task Force. I anticipate a committee meeting will be struck for next week to discuss the final details before we're able to respond to the province.
Thank you.
We did meet with the province, and they're very supportive of the idea.
Okay, thank you. To take some of that extra fund and reassign it to other needs within the Trails Task Force. Councillor Sim, you look like you got a question.
Yeah, I do. I just do. Because I mean, I love what's happening. I still think we have some discussion to be had around Dutch Lake and some of those lines and signs and stuff like that. But that's what 2023 is for. But I just want to make sure that despite some of these costs that we're up to date, or are we waiting on the government to make payments to us?
Yes, we are waiting on the government. The most recent payment we got was about 720 some odd thousand. I had sent out a email maybe 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
But where we are is submitting reports to the province and making that financial ask to be paid to the district. So, for example, yesterday we did submit a report on the Highway 5 to Roundabout one. The province wants to pay those monies to the district, but they want every item on the project to be completed. So even though the project reached substantial completion, there are still residual items that the contractor must complete. And until those are done, the project will not be considered complete, and the province will not provide the final tranche of payment until the final reporting is done.
That's it for now. Councillor Bratton, you look like you have a question.
With the 16,000 overrun, you want to put it in the roads program or budget. We're already very short on our roads budget. Is that a good, I don't know, it throws a kink into it, but because you're over on the other ones, what's the need with throwing it into the roads budget?
Great question. When the district applied for those grants, we had to sign a commitment to the province that any cost overruns will be absorbed by the district. Part of that project is, from an accounting perspective,
Okay.
the 16,700, let's say, cost overruns will be assigned to the project. That doesn't change. But how does the district finance it is the question. And so we're proposing to use, and we'll bring forward a formal motion likely on December 20th. Council was to call that special meeting to dedicate that money under the roads program because it was related to roads for the cost overruns.
So then would we backfill that money with some of the overrun money? Surplus of the other parks, trails, sorry?
We can't, unfortunately. So for the roundabout to Highway 5, to Wells Green, sorry, that project is not 100% funded.
Right.
And all of the expenses the district incurred on that particular project will be recovered through the grant up to the maximum ceiling that they have. And the additional amounts will be covered under gas tax. For the Dutch Lake project, the 54,000 that we have in surplus, we're asking the province to transfer that to the Clearwater River Trail project because we will have a significant shortfall on that particular project.
Okay.
I think I understand that. Further comments or questions on that? Right. Moving on to bylaws then. Intercommunity business bylaw. There is a recommendation that bylaw number 267, 2022 be adopted. Thank you. Seconder on that. Okay. This one, I just read it one more last time and then that's the discussion part. And then we all say all in favor or against. District of Clearwater, bylaw number 267, whereas council may pursuant to section 8.6 of the community charter, regulate in relation to business, and whereas pursuant to section 14 of the community charter, 2 or more municipalities may, by bylaw adopted by the council of each participating government, establish an intercommunity scheme in relation to one or more matters, and whereas pursuant to section 15.1 of the community charter, council may provide terms and conditions that may be imposed for obtaining, continuing to hold, or renewing a license, permit, or approval, and specific the nature of the terms. Is that supposed to be specified? Anyways, and conditions and who may impose them. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater, an open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the Intercommunity Business License Bylaw number 2022, number 267. All those in favor? That is adopted. And then we're moving on to 17.2, reserve bylaw amendments, pages 113 to 122. Comments to staff on this? Questions?
Just gonna move the first recommendation that it
Okay.
be read a first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to move it for the first time? Seconder on the reading it for the first time? Thank you. Now I gotta find the bylaw. Heck, there it is. This is 276. Sorry. 116?
216.
Oh, 216. I have 277 in my package. Do I have 118? That one's 277. Right. Thank you. Sorry. It's the 216 and then 277. Anyways, bylaw number 277, 2022, a bylaw to amend District of Clearwater Reserve Funds, bylaw number 216, 2019, whereas Council District of Clearwater Reserves Funds, bylaw number 216, 2019, and whereas Council deems it desirable to amend bylaw number 216, and the desirable changes to that bylaw have been considered. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater Clearwater Reserve Funds Bylaw number 216-2029, Amendment Bylaw number 277-2022. All those in favor? That passes. Now there is a recommendation that is in your package, but not on the agenda, that this be read for a second and third time. Discussion? If not, can I get a mover in a second for it to be read for a second and third time together? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. District of Clearwater bylaw number 277-2022. A bylaw to amend District of Clearwater Reserves Funds bylaw number 216-2019. Whereas council has adopted District of Clearwater Reserves Fund bylaw number 216-2019, and whereas council deems it desirable to amend bylaw number 216 and the desirable changes to that bylaw have been considered, now therefore the council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembled and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater Reserves Funds bylaw number 216-2019, amendment bylaw number 277-2022. All those in favor? Thank you. I know, right? Moving on to page 123 of your package. The bylaw number 276. Okay. 276. Huh. After 277. Okay. So there we go. Bylaw number 2. New bylaw versions and old bylaw versions. Bylaw number 276. There is a recommendation in your package that we fit in there before the recommendation in your agenda, which is for this to be read for a first time. Any questions of staff on this explanation? Councillor Sim.
Yeah, I
yes,
need it to be
confused.
translated. Thanks.
So bylaw 217-2019, that is your septic receiving bylaw. That bylaw has a schedule, and in the schedule was for 3 years. So that ends at December 31st, 2022. So this amendment to the bylaw brings it forward for 1 more year. That will provide council a chance to go through their strategic planning, to go through their longer term financial planning, and perhaps set a change in how they to forward in the years post 2024 to whatever council decides. So what I have in front of you is a septic receiving upkeep rate. It was $40 a cubic meter of septic. I've recommended to go to 44, 10% increase. It is the same as our sewage rates that we have. And so I just thought I just connected those two. Council can choose to adopt the recommendation, however, or they can choose if they so choose. The septic receiving currently is at surplus, obviously, going to be being that when those large customers are not there, it may not cover your full cost. So my recommendation is under the operating of full recovery of that area. Typically standard. That is, yeah, principle I'm operating under.
Go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
It's also important for council to note that the current bylaw expires on December 31st, 2022. Without a bylaw enabling us to charge in 2023, beginning January 1, it's free. So either council maintains the existing price or of $40 in 23 and beyond, or change it to a lower level. But without a bylaw, we will not be able to charge anyone beginning January 1st.
Yeah. Okay. And that takes us in line. So the difference between sewage and septage in simple English is septage is something that's delivered and sewage comes down our current pipe system. Is that correct? Okay, so septage is stuff that's pumped out of people's tanks and delivered to the facility, whereas sewage comes out when you flush the toilet and arrives on on our. I know, right? So don't worry. It only took me like 5 years to try to get those straight. But in essence, it's essentially the same product deposit. But yes, so this would put us in line. And one further comment, in the past, it's been sort of known that the rate to dump septage, so the delivered stuff versus the pipe stuff in Clearwater, has been inexpensive enough that people were willing to drive a distance to drop it here rather than at their local facilities. So I think this gets us more in line with it paying for itself, which is always the goal of these services, and also might offer a little bit of a deterrent to bring extra stuff to Clearwater, considering this is a facility that needs to be managed, has repairs, has a life cycle to it, et cetera, that it's best used for our region. Let's just put it that way. So what is the desire of council? The recommendation is to
I
move
have
it.
a question for staff.
Okay, go ahead. Councillor Sim.
Just to, and you may not be able to answer this, but I'll give it a whirl, is what would this mean for a local resident? Because the cost is then passed on to them. So on average, what would that mean for them? Not our industrial customers, but for a residential. I know that we've been working hard over several years to try and get the cost in line. I just do look at the, where we've gone from 2020 to into 23.
For our contractors that have the set, if they choose to carry it that along, they would be getting a 10%. Have to if contractors sign. However, our sewer, the ones that close to,
Yeah.
they're also
Okay.
Like if a pumper truck came and pumped out my septic. Yeah, what would, like, I'm just trying to,
well,
so that it's kind of.
I am not certain what they charge here, so let's, if it's $300 or
Yeah, it's like 350,
10%
that was
of that, that's what we would.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That's what it would relate to. If, however, the contractors can
Can
set
they
their own
charge
rates.
whatever, yes, if they might go up 60 bucks.
You will notice that in the bylaw, we have a minimum charge. That hasn't changed. Kept that the same. So each truck that goes to the septic station, if we have less than the minimum, they will get charged 100.
Councillor Herring.
So I'm I'm jumping ahead, but it's, I'm getting confused. The sewer rates that we're proposing are tied in with this, the septage? No. Oh, okay, so that,
But I am tying them together because the septic flows to the sewer ditch.
okay.
The sewer rates are already set for 2023. So I'm just matching the increases, I'm just matching them.
Okay. Because I think the conversation I'm curious about having maybe in our utility review then is about the table of who gets what rate on sewer. And I'm just wondering if this will affect that at all. No, okay, perfect.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas.
Done a little ad hoc research. We estimate the average septic tank have a capacity of 4.5 cubic meters. And assuming a $40 per cubic meter charge, we're looking at $180 per person to empty their septic tank. I'm not talking about any additional charges for the contractor's work. I'm just talking about what it would cost to deposit the septic in our station. Whereas using the 36.35 figure, which was 2021, it would have been $163. So it's about a $20 increase per household or per customer.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Any further comments? If not, can I get somebody to move this for the first time? It's a shitty job, but somebody can do it. Thank you, Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Bratton. District of Clearwater bylaw number 276, 2022, a bylaw to amend bylaw 217, 2019, a bylaw to regulate and manage septic disposal facilities within the District of Clearwater, whereas section 137 of the community charter provides that the power to adopt a bylaw includes the power to amend or repeal it, and whereas the council of the District of Clearwater wishes to amend bylaw number 217, 2019, a bylaw to regulate and manage septic disposal facilities within the District of Clearwater. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater Amendment Bylaw number 276, 2022 to amend the septic disposal regulation and management bylaw number 217, 2019. All those in favor? Now we move on to reading it for the second and third time, which is the recommendation in your package. Moved by Councillor Frizzle. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bratton. Discussion further on this. Seeing none. District of Clearwater bylaw number 276, 2022, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 217, 2019. A bylaw to regulate and manage septic disposal facilities within the District of Clearwater. Whereas section 137 of the community charter provides that the power to adopt a bylaw includes the power to amend or repeal it. And whereas the Council of the District of Clearwater wishes to amend bylaw number 217, 2019, a bylaw to regulate and manage septic disposal facilities within the District of Clearwater. Now, therefore, the Council of the District of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the District of Clearwater Amendment Bylaw number 276, 2022 to amend the septic disposal regulation and management bylaw number 217, 2019. All those in favor? Thank you. Item 18, Committee of the Whole. Moving to there is a recommendation that the council enter a committee of the whole meeting of the Government Operations Standing Committee. Can I get a mover and a seconder on that? You can't move your own committee, I don't think. So moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Bratton, and I turn the chair over to Councillor Frizzle. Woo.
So moving on to 18.2, the financial plan, utility update.
In 2021, council put forward two bylaws, one for the sewer user bylaw, for the water user bylaw, and that considered rates for 2022 and 2020. So for 2023, those rates are set. Annual increases for each of those bylaws. For sewer side was 10% increase, water side. I've also attached a program where Miss Janice Aber, she produced, and she had
for your information, on those recommendations, and perhaps to remind you when she brought that forward and her recommendations for us to consider as we move forward in long-term financial planning as well as the short. The first item there that I want to bring your attention to that we move towards a full cost recovery as we set our rates for water and sewer. So we have about 830 sewer users and about, 830 water customers and 260 sewer users. So not a lot of customers over the amount of budget. So as I go through this, I'm going to just talk about the water utility, and then I'll talk about the sewer utility, and then I'll talk about just more of a question in how we're going to fund them going forward. So in the water utility, we estimate that of the 830 customers, we bring in revenues of about $640,000 a year. The service, the general service to bring the water forward is about $650,000. So that delta of about $40,000 is allocated to the capital water reserve every year. Or it can go into unrestricted. It depends how the budget is aligned and how council has decided to use that surplus. Currently in our capital reserve, our water capital reserve, that reserve is used for capital projects, tangible capital projects. We have about $340,000 in that. It's on line 133. Now on the sewer side, we bring in $265,000 from 206. And to provide that day-to-day operating cost, it costs us $200,000. And again, that $65,000 may be allocated to the capital reserve or an operating sewer reserve. So in the sewer side, we have two reserves, a capital and an operating allocated. The capital reserves are used. The capital reserve for sewer, we have $154,000, and that can be used for our capital coming forward. The operating reserve, we have $69,000, and that can be used for operating projects or rate stabilization. Bubbles coming up, so we that's the operating side of the business, and moving forward into the five-year project plan. I just wanted to identify that we see some major projects coming forward. In 2023, we have cell to desludging that is required, $731,000. We have in 2024 a $750,000 project for the hospital lift station upgrade, and in 2026 we have $525,000 for the wastewater treatment plant. That's just for council information. Projects coming forward, so we need to fund them so that we can. So as council moves through their strategic plan in the near future, council may develop a funding model that will help to bring forward these projects, and they can consider grants for them. That would be wonderful. Debt in that forward, or we could use it. And I have attached the sewer user bylaws just for your information as we move forward, and I have attached the
Is there any questions?
Sure.
Yeah,
Just,
go ahead.
just clarification maybe from staff on this is just reinforcing the point that if we don't recover our costs from users, we recover them from taxpayers that don't get to access these services. So it's critical that we do the best to balance. The people that are using are the people that pay for this, basically. Councillor Herring.
I just wonder if there's not some way we can include in that process when we look at this strategically, which users we're giving which rates to. And I think what I'm considering there specifically is there's tons of people who rented out spots for RVs or have suites and they're paying for a single family dwelling worth sewage, but they may be producing much larger quantity than that. So I think we might need, I don't know, I don't have an answer. I just think that we need to take a more nuanced look at how we can structure some of those, especially with suites. I know suites are kind of covered here. If it's a separate, I don't, trying to remember the language here, but yeah, I think we can dig more into that. Also, there's some differences that I'm confused about, like the rates for places of worship are lower than public hall, for example, but in my opinion, like, what's the difference in volume there? Right? Like, I don't know how to ask that delicately.
I can absolutely tell you.
You know, like, and it's a delicate conversation. But yeah, I do think that we can review some of those users and look at, I wonder if there's a way, you know, beyond metering, that we can actually tell who's using the water, right? And how much, and base our rates accordingly.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
Good question, Councillor Herring. In theory, if you have a family dwelling and you will be paying to, you should. I'm not certain that is occurring in all. Some municipalities will take a little bit more more proactive approach, whereby if they do see that there is a single dual dwelling advertised, or they will check the records and see. If there's things we could do. Are we ready bylaws for that? It's right here. It says multiple dwelling.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
This is a great conversation, and I look forward to working with council next year in a deeper dive on some of these. What you're sensing is foundational review of fees and charges bylaw for the district, tying that into bylaw enforcement, which was mentioned earlier, and also tying that into business license bylaw review that's currently underway. Because if we have a scenario where a person in the community will require a business license to operate rentals, as an example, that will be one trigger point for the organization to operating a business. Should the fees you're being charged be reflective of that? So with council's direction next year, a review of the fees and charges bylaw is certainly recommended.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll move on to 18.3 and the 2023 to 2027 financial plan, capital and special projects.
The report you have in front of you is on page 177. And the purpose of this report is to provide council with the opportunity to provide additions, modifications, deferrals, or remove projects from the draft project plan, and to ensure council is comfortable with the draft 20 projects to meet public engagement.
council will have many opportunities. Up until the bylaw is adopted, council can change the bylaw. What we're looking for is, in anticipation of the December 13th public engagement session, does council want to make any preemptive changes now to the list of priorities for 2023? Whether it's through adding things, removing things, modifying current projects, etc. Or does council want us to take the draft, bring it to the public engagement session, provide a report along with inputs that and feedback that we receive, and council could then make another decision whether to add, remove, modify, or cancel those projects.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Your feedback that you would be getting is from the public meeting? Okay.
Councillor Sen?
So I just want to speak to item number 6, which is the wayfinding and signage. Going back to that community economic development funding grant that we got, there is a line item in there that we would accomplish a project each year on that. And I think this year it's $40,000. And one of the priorities was wayfinding. So for me, I'm just wondering where that fits in the priority, because I think that this is slated for under a grant and wouldn't necessarily come from tax dollars. Where does it fit under that grant? Because that's kind of a cornerstone to where the Trails Task Force would like to finalize these projects.
Absolutely, great question, and I think Wiley's going to expand, but I first wanted to indicate, you're going to share the good news, don't worry. I first wanted to indicate that with respect to the economic development grant, we went back to the funder and asked if we can use the total sum of that grant for wages for the economic development officer. This was something we had reported to council prior. And so the question is, how do we fund wayfinding? And Wiley's going to share that.
I think Councillor Sin had a larger question than that. So the wayfinding grant application, we in fact got the phone call this morning that we were successful in that grant. And, pardon? So the wayfinding on, sorry, I wasn't expecting to talk. I have no papers. So on one of the attachments on my earlier report was the building economic development capacity through SCDC. That grant application was submitted on November 1st. We received notification today that we were, in fact, partially successful. I should clarify that. At the time, they had in total $300,000 that they were distributing in grants. They received $930,000 in grant applications. They then found some additional money, so in total, they've distributed $553,000. So still only 50% of the grant application. So we have been approved for 10,000 of the 15,000 that we applied for. And that will, the part that we did not receive the application for, and you'll find in the package that you're referring, that is under here right now, section, there's a wayfinding. Sorry. So on page 179, there's an attachment that lists the wayfinding business case for 2023. And I'm not sure where. Okay. Right. Okay. So 195. So that is the business case that supported that we wrote in support of the grant application. You'll see that on the business case there was a reference to possibly doing some work on the removal of the derelict billboards. And so that's the portion that that did not get funding. So yeah. So So that gives us the opportunity to go back at another time and look at it from other programs. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that. So the first three items that we talk about under the strategy, so the reimbursement grant, the sign audit, and some new wayfinding signage will be covered under the 10,000 that we have received funding for. In reference to the larger grant, we had, as Mr. Thomas had noted, we've received the permission from the funder to reallocate some of, so we're within the funding envelope, so we haven't changed the total funding envelope, but we've asked to realign some of the values of the line items. So that's how this position was paid for. And we've requested that grant be extended for another year. So instead of having it due on March 30th of 2023, it will become due on March 30th, 2024. And we'll again be able to pay some ongoing wages out of that grant. I'm
Go
not
ahead,
sure if we're all
Councillor
talking
Sim.
about the same grants, but
Yeah, no, we're talking too. I wasn't aware that that grant had been gone back to the funder for it. I don't think I can't remember when that update was had. So I'm going to need a refresher on that one, when that was, because I keep referring to what's in the actual plan, where it actually outlines sort of the 3-year plan and what money was going to be spent on some of the economic development. I didn't realize it had now been all funded. It's now funding just the position.
and I'm not entirely sure that, quite frankly, because you made reference to a $40,000 line item, and the grant application that I've seen from the funder doesn't include that line item of that amount.
Yeah, I can only go off of the report that was presented, and that's it. So, and we don't get, that's what so all of this is new information. So it's been a while since we've had an update on where that grant, we get the trails updates on those grant applications, but this would be another grant that, to get that update, and certainly how it changes, very similar to how we change with the trail. So it would be good to understand that.
Yeah, and so we can look to bring that forward at another time, because I simply,
Yeah, of
I
course.
need to.
And that's
to
my question
familiarize
about
myself as well,
that's my
because-
question about the wayfinding, because on that document, which I've been working off of, it's quite clear that it talks about the wayfinding. So, but you found another way to get it done. So congratulations on that.
Mayor Blackwell?
Yeah, and I think that's basically our first Etsy grant, which used to be second.
Our second.
S-
It's
so-
my second one since I've been with the
Okay,
district.
so yeah, and we hadn't actually been successful on any CITID, which became Etsy grants in the history of that, and I'm now on that board for granting. Okay, good. Oh, that's not official yet, but it is. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry. go ahead.
Councillor Bratton, go ahead.
What's wayfinding? Well, I'm kind of thinking that, but is it directional signage?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be how the Trails Task Force at the hospital trail, they've got the post there.
Okay,
And
okay.
it tells you which way to go.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay, Mayor Blackwell?
absolutely. This
Great asset.
this is one of the things that Ms. Bystead and others have pointed out, especially when you're in the tourism industry. When you come to Clearwater, we know where Dutch Lake is. We know where the hotel is. We know where all these things are. We take that for granted so often, and we don't make this place directionally friendly for new people,
Visitors.
inexperienced people, and visitors. And so wayfinding it has been a blind spot for us for quite a long time.
Any further questions on that? I'm thinking that there's a recommendation.
It is to rise from the committee of the whole.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
that's
there
what I
any?
thought.
Yeah, right. Is there any feedback? May I,
Go
Chair?
ahead.
Yeah, at this particular point, I like the idea of taking all the spaghetti and throwing it at the wall and see what sticks with the public engagement. So as far as all the business cases and plans in here, you know, as Councillor Simmons said earlier about, you know, the larger duty post-election for public engagement, why not we put it all to citizens for comment? So I'm okay with leaving it all on there at this point. And we have the opportunity to take something off at a later date if it doesn't fit within budget.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So with that, I would also wonder, because we've already spent more money on the infamous Dutch Lake discussion, but it's still not right. So does
No.
that need to go into a budget consultation? I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't go through another summer.
No. Mayor Blackwell?
I am completely in favor of a more fulsome discussion on what we should do with the public on Dutch Lake,
Yeah.
or at least allow for their input at this
Totally.
meeting.
So I don't know if that would be capital or
Lake
under a different
pathway.
way. Yeah, anything like that.
It would be a capital project. The question that council needs to contend with is, does council want to direct staff to go back and develop some options and cost them out and bring that forward at this time for 2023 fiscal year, or do you want to do that for a future fiscal?
I don't think we have time, do we? Sorry, that's, you know, my opinion is that I don't think we have time to do a capital plan for that. Is there a way in the future for us to fund a different plan on shorter notice without having it into the budget? I'm sure there is for a smaller scale revision of what exists there right now. But knowing how building projects go, we're thinking anything fancier than maybe a slight pathway or something, we're probably going to have to budget for the following year.
Councillor Sim?
So one of the things I found interesting is when TRU, they did their design paths when the campus was being developed, is they did it in the winter because they watched the natural habit of how humans walked. And so when all the snow was tramped down, they actually mapped that was how people work. I find it really interesting this winter how people use the road going down there,
Yeah.
right? And it's not how we have laid it out. And that's what's causing a lot of angst, et cetera. So I would be interested in knowing how do we kind of go back to scratch, knowing that it isn't quite right without having to go for the larger pathways and the cost to it. But my concern is that there's still confusion, and confusion leads to accidents over one of our best assets. So that is something that I wonder about some costing for. And I do believe we have to go back to the public and just ask, how do you want to see that area grow? And they've had some great ideas, but will we be able to maybe capture it into this budget? Probably not, but I certainly think that, you know, change is a long conversation. But we do want to address it and do incremental towards being a community that can really make use of that great asset.
Go ahead, Councillor Broughton.
I'd like to say that if we are going to create change or come up with a plan, that it actually is conveyed to the public, that we're looking into this process, because I think that's where part of the issue arose last time. The change came in, nobody understood. And at whatever, I don't know the process that was involved or any of that. If we do, you know, even that we're discussing it today, if something could come out maybe with our communication person, that we are actively engaging on discussion around this topic and that we're not just letting it lie flat. We need to build up our trust within our community, you know, and create that conversation that this is what we're doing around it. Am I allowed to say all that?
Yeah, for sure. Are there any further questions? I guess I have one. Would it be possible, and I don't know because this is money coming from elsewhere, if we go on a less scale on 37 East, we could use some of that money to do just something, that pathway or whatever direction we go to use that. I don't know if that's a possibility, but there's a lot of money there. Maybe we could use it. Okay, just a thought. Oh, Councillor Herring, do you have another?
I think like in terms of including it here, I don't think it's a good time to do it, because I do think the conversation is just in the starting place. And I think that strategically, we have to look at that whole area. So I really do think it's going to probably be a multi-year thing, which means that this summer, whatever risk is there is still going to be there. There's going to be no direct change on the, but well, if we have to do something, then it has to be in here, and we should have been working on it 6 months ago. Like that's my take on it, because we don't have time. Like getting a builder for a residential build, let alone a massive redo of Dutch Lake Beach, is out of reach within a year. That's just my personal take on it.
Councillor Sim?
Yeah, and I completely agree, but I don't think we're talking a rebuild. I think we're going back to the lines. And I think it could be as simple as going out. There's been a number of people that have said, look, let's just call it a day and there's no parking, right? And that's why the importance of 37 East is there. So how do you use that space? How do you note how people have been using it appropriately, but not doing the massive rebuild? I agree. Well, what can we do to amend that?
Councillor Herring?
I just see that the way we got into this situation was by behaving like this, right? By going through this without taking a broader look at this. We did public consultations on these trails. We had input. It just took us a while to get to where we needed to be. My concern is if we start making quick line changes, temporary adjustments with parking, all of that stuff, we're just further doing what we've already been doing. Are we not? So how is it different? Us snap judgment, changing the lines, how we think is best.
Councillor Sim?
So since you asked the question, I don't think it is a snap judgment. I do think that we had the public consultation. I went back to the plans, and the plans looked really nice. On paper, it looked really nice. In the consultation, it looked nice, and it looked like it would realistically work. When it was put into practice, it didn't work. And it was just that simple. So I think that it was a thoughtful process. It was intended to keep the citizens safe. It was intended for things. But we're hearing from our business sector that it's not wide enough, that they don't feel safe. They don't know where to drive right now in the winter. So our decision has brought about more questions and created more uncertainty. And we've had that feedback since summer. So here we are moving into the budget process where it's supposed to be. And I think that we are addressing it, saying, can we set aside some money? We've just said that we would take it to consultation, right? We can't necessarily get hard line items, but we aren't passing the budget until May. But we can start talking about it.
Any further questions? All right, there's a recommendation that council rise from committee of the whole. Oh, sorry, I missed that.
I
Oh,
just want to make sure I understand.
oh, we
council's
didn't do that.
direction
Yes, we
clear.
didn't do that. I'm sorry.
Is there any additions, subtractions, modifications?
Not at this time from me,
I would
but I
say-
think we'll be during this next meeting, listening to all sorts of public input.
yeah.
Sorry.
Everything's in for now.
Is there any questions council wants us specifically to address in public engagement?
There's a
Councillor Sim.
worm can that's not big enough for that one, but
Councillor Sim, go ahead.
Let me bring the elephant out. Yeah, I whether there's a way to capture some feedback, and then maybe we follow up. So taking Councillor Herring's suggestion to Dutch Lake, yeah, specific to Dutch Lake. We've heard you. Not everybody's happy. Like that's come through loud and clear.
Yeah.
What would that look like for you? Maybe that's the question to ask without necessarily having to do the line item and getting that feedback. But I think not to include it is in absence.
I will agree with that. I think it's going to be the topic of discussion regardless of whether or not it's on the agenda. So we might as well put it on the
Put it on there,
agenda for public input versus us budgeting on it at this point, just for public input. Maybe a station, maybe a table, maybe a map that you can align your own pieces of licorice or whatever on it to change the lines.
Ms. Clausen, did you want to add something?
Like clarification that you're looking at option 5 and you're adding the comment that regarding
And I will volunteer to man that table. No, no, there won't be any need because when you ask for input, it's okay. I would rather hear it,
Yeah.
and I think that I'm happy to stand. Anybody else wants to stand with me? No problem, but I think that that's a good place for council to be.
Mr. Thomas?
I would like to highlight for council, I've heard anecdotally of the need to slow down quality versus quantity. 2023, we have right now before you 44 projects. 2022, we had 37 projects. Some of these are carried forwards. I fully recognize that. However, in 2024, we are down to 10, which is ideally and manageable for this organization given our capacity. So we're working to achieve your goal. Right now, it's like a clock type, and we're about to get these things done and set council up to be able to define what its goals are so we can work.
So with the 44 projects that you're saying for 2023, is that what we've got on here now with everything? So that may not
Okay.
necessarily stay that way. Okay.
Okay,
No,
before we
Blackwell?
move back, yeah, I was suggesting that, and we're gonna get into strategic planning and we're gonna have further discussions and maybe we will have that discussion about what we push into 2024 and 2025. Because there is gonna be urgency to different projects. Thank you.
All right. Now there's a recommendation that council rise from the committee of the whole.
So moved. I can actually do that.
Seconder? Councillor Bratton, all those in favor? Back to you, Mayor
Good
Blackwell.
discussion. Correspondence, response required. There is none. Item 20, 21, 2, and 3. If there's something you'd like to comment on any of these, the first one is Valley Connector transit numbers. 203, 204, North Thompson Arts Council letter, notes, and BC SPCA. I haven't seen a letter from them in a long time, so I did actually notice that there was a BC SPCA truck in town a few days ago, parked on the side of the road by Dutch Lake there, so that's kind of interesting. And yes, we're not directly covered by BC SPCA here in town, but they will respond to extreme calls up here, complaint driven, if something's rather sort of off the scale, if I remember correctly, and somebody from staff can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that's it for correspondence information items. No notices of motion. Comments from the public. Annabelle. And then Doug. Yep. Yeah, that's why we want to talk about it again. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. Mr. Borrow. I think it's more about what's a priority project is versus, there's a lot of things that have happened out the last couple of years that have slowed down projects, availability of materials, all sorts of different things. Capacity definitely has been a factor for the last couple of years here. With staff changeover, we've pretty much had almost an entire staff changeover here. I think we're probably down to less than 20% of the staff that was here 2 or 3 years ago. So that is definitely a factor in it. But we're going to do strategic planning in the spring here, and all of this could change in direction again. We may hear from staff that they have more capacity to do certain things. Some of these 44 projects, some of them are as simple as things like putting up flagpoles. Maybe we decide that's not an urgent priority, and that comes off the list and something that requires a little bit of time, like sewer expansion or something like that, does go on the list. So a lot of it is financial capacity. Definitely staff capacity has been an issue for the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of development pressure in the next couple of years, which are going to basically require us to do things that are outside of what we strategically plan anyways, if that helps answer that a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, yeah, and I hope you're right. And I've had we've had the discussion about things like building inspection and planning and that sort of thing. Sort of putting the feeler out there in the rest of the world, how other communities do that when they hit a boom or a spike in needs to get those things done. I've talked to multiple mayors, Valemount, Princeton, other communities that have taken that in house. But it's all part of the discussion of strategic planning coming up here in the next few months. I think we're on the same side on that one. It just, we need to figure out how we financially and internally staff do that. And do we add more outside? Do we borrow? And if we borrow, then we have to go back to the taxpayers for that if it hits certain thresholds. So it's complicated, but that's one of the first things that this new council wants to discuss in the next calendar year. And hopefully we get that plan out there quickly. Yep. So in the letter, or I don't know what the information that I don't have that. I would. Yeah, there's a few things there. The property owner found as-built from 1977 for that information at the time that wasn't correct. You're gonna have to talk to staff on that one as far as specifics, but yes, as I said, the number of things we find, what was put in the ground the last few years is pretty much all I trust on most of these plans. Yeah, and we're finding that not only in this one, that we need, every time we ground through something, there's more to it than we know. Yeah, yeah. No, that's just a pricing. Yeah, council hasn't made that decision at this particular point. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, we're finding that for sure. Anything further? No. Yep. There's generally $100,000 a year, and we've gone from capital. I'll leave that one with staff. I think we've also we've had a couple fluctuations. I believe we're headed towards 300,000 potentially in the next budget for instead of the 100,000 a year. Yeah, I think we've actually. I'll let staff speak to that if they wish. It,
Schedule B, project, Schedule B is your, project update. So yes, you're talking about the capital piece of it. The annual roads capital program is $100,000. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's page 41 of 206. On Schedule A, those are the operating budgets are there. Transportation services. Those are in there. So if you look at page 43 of 206, you'll see transportation services includes public works, fleet, road maintenance, transit, septic receiving, and dikes. So it provides a general line.
it also back to, part of the reason we're investing in this new financial software, because it makes it easier to find the stuff like that when we do that, and helps us with our planning. One of the biggest struggles over the last time I've been sitting in one of these chairs is that we kept on doing budgets that didn't compare apples to apples. We kept on allocating things to different departments and files and percentages. Back in the day, part of Roger's truck was assigned to this job and that job, and it didn't really make any sense. 12% of Roger's truck being paid for out of one department, things like that. What a lot of the thought in the last couple of years here is to get everything stabilized so we can compare year to year and solve some of where are things being budgeted out of, clarify them into real sort of categories. Anything further? Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah, there was one a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, but we can find you a copy and send you the last one. It does come out, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's welcome to do too much, and yeah, for sure.
It's also under the CAO report in the council agenda. Is if you look in each department, they do an update there. And then I think that what you also heard today is to get another fulsome one moving forward.
Yeah, I think we did one for in October was an update. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Yeah, so quarterly is not, there's a lot going on, but quarterly on some of these files is pretty common in most organizations that we deal with. So yeah. 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 No. Yeah, I think housing developments. I think housing development, with a lot of the provincial changes and legislation and requirements for communities to step up on that, is going to be a huge part of it. I know the director mentioned the mine thing, but I'd be very cautious on that one because there's a lot of issues with reconciliation and stuff on that one. But yes, I'm great for him to push at this particular point, but that's a conversation with our First Nations neighbors on that one. Trans Mountain, Hasn't made a deadline yet, so I don't expect them to be gone as fast as they say they are. Yeah, I do hear you. Yeah, I do hear you. Yeah, for sure. And one of the biggest barriers on that was having all the CAD4 lands tied up. Now that that's available for development or I know, but that in times of what we do, that's really isn't that long. So yes, I mean that's part of the reason we have an economic development person versus having that off the corner of somebody's desk. But yes, it definitely, we're still in the sort of the information gathering stage, but as opportunities come up and like everything else, I mean, the amount of stuff that comes in that I can't talk about or I hear about is probably 19 out of 20 things, right? So it's not always quiet. It's just that you can't talk about people's business, right? So I do have hope on some fronts. Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah. If you want to have a good conversation about a potential, talk to George at Community Forests. He has a bunch of stuff that he needs solved in a big way that could be an economic driver for here.
And watch your chamber emails too.
Yeah.
The chamber emails, because they're doing some really good stuff, and they've got a speaker series that's coming up, and they're doing some. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but they're taking a good prominent position.
Okay. Thank you. We do need to move into in camera. There is a motion that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91C, G, and I of the community charter to discuss matters related to labor relations and other employee relations, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are in their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could possibly be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Can I get mover and a seconder for that one? All in favor? Thank you. And we'll take a 5-minute recess while we get everything reset. Okay, thank you.